What do you make of the drinking? Because this is another big thing, and this could potentially come back to haunt you with these senators, even ones who like you, right? Because nobody wants, even if you're not an alcoholic, which I believe, you can't have somebody who's inebriated to the point where they need to be carried in from their hotel room, as alleged anonymously in these New Yorker reports,
anonymously,
running the Pentagon. Like, you know that. So to the people who have read these reports talking about public inebriation and needing repeatedly to be carried into your hotel room at night, and even now there's an NBC report, anonymous, which oddly includes a Pentagon correspondent, which is very interesting to me. Why would a Pentagon, like, it does make me wonder whether some of their sources are over there.
Well, maybe there's some people in the Pentagon that don't want me to be the Secretary of Defense, which wouldn't surprise me.
That's a report that claims that some of our Fox News colleagues, former and current, are saying you showed up at Fox and went on the air intoxicated. So how do you respond to those reports?
Check the tape, first of all. I want to start where we began, too. I want to start my comment where we began this conversation. All of those allegations are anonymous. All of them are unsubstantiated. No one's putting their name on it. No one can point to an actual incident, an actual place, an actual piece of evidence. None of it. I was at my brother's house last night where I was talking about where did this allegation come of me being in a strip club? That's one of the things that's been reported.
In Louisiana, that you were in a strip club, not just in the strip club, storming the stage.
On the stage at a strip club. And we were just sitting there talking, end of the day. Where did this come from? And my brother and sister-in-law actually both worked with me at Concerned Veterans for America before she was my sister-in-law. They met. And they said, Pete, don't you know what happened there? I said, no. He goes, there was an incident at a strip club. Something happened that was addressed. You were nowhere near there. You weren't even at the event. You weren't even in the state. Yet someone has there's so much information coming at us so fast that it's hard to digest it. You're being accused of something you weren't even at. So if they're making up an instance of something where I didn't even attend, how can you believe a single other thing that any of these people are saying in any instance, to include being carried up to my room? With a bunch of vets who are working hard, have come back from combat deployments, would they have beers? Sure. I'm not gonna dissuade you of that. But the idea that it was constantly being carried up anywhere is patently false, which is why all of these people have come out in writing with their names on the record. I'm not just talking about people that were on the stage with me, production crew, field staff, administrative staff, volunteers, all willing to come out and say, we've been with Pete for years and years across the country, and we've seen none of these things.
I don't know who these anonymous accusers are about the Fox News Times, but I did see Fox and Friends, every single member of Fox and Friends this morning go on the air and say, this is BS. And as I said, Joey Jones and Dan Bongino and Will Cain. And I worked with you for years at Fox News. I am the reason you became a contributor there, as you know.
Fact.
And that was primetime night, hits that you were doing with me, and never once, not even the hint of alcohol or any alcohol problem.
And so what I'm trying to do is prove a negative, right? So what this is, again, the anatomy of a smear. So they have tried to create a narrative based on what they said about Vets for Freedom and CVA and all of that, and now they're trying to extend the string. This is what they're trying to do with senators, right? Okay, we've got to extend this string from past behavior to current behavior. And so what NBC is going to do is make up anonymous sources, none of which are close to me, none of which know me, claiming that I had a drinking problem at Fox or was drunk on air. I tell everybody out there, check the tape.
Yeah, where's the drunken tape?
Find the drunken, and by the way, I got a text from my senior producer of Fox and Friends Weekend recently said, Pete, you were by far always the most reliable member of our team for every moment I was there. You were there every morning, on time, ready to go, never missed a beat, ever. Ask the primetime hosts whose shows I do at 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock. So most of the time when I'm in New York, I'm doing a show at 9 or 10 at night, and then my own show at 6 in the morning. It's patently false and patently ridiculous. And everybody who's around me, from hosts to staff to producers to production crew, you know how many people are in those studios.
Know.
You know how many people are in here right now. There's 25 people behind the cameras right now. If I had a problem, even a sniff, there was a Mediaite reporter that came out on Twitter today by their name saying, I've covered Fox for 15 years. That place leaks like a sieve is what they said. He said, I've never heard one iota of a thing about Pete.
Honestly, and when I was there, You knew. Like, there were certain people. There was one who, I won't repeat his name here, but he's come on my show and talked about it, who had a serious alcohol problem. And there was an intervention. Roger helped him, got him into a treatment program. It wasn't even something that where, you would necessarily be fired or, shamed. You would be helped, but nothing around you. And, we knew about the wife situation, right?
Sure.
But nothing with respect to alcohol.
It is again, the anatomy of a smear. They're trying to extend it out because they want to create a scenario where senators go, okay, I could handle this, I could handle that, but if he's drinking, I can't handle that.
Yep.
That is by far the least true aspect of any part of this.
So have you stopped drinking now, or what's this?
Thank you for asking that. So my plan going forward, ongoing, is when I deployed, we had something called General Order Number 1. And in General Order Number 1, it is you are not allowed to drink while you're on deployment, right? So if you're in Iraq and Afghanistan in a combat zone, you're not allowed to drink. That's how I view this role as Secretary of Defense, is that I'm not going to have a drink at all. And it's not hard for me because it's not a problem for me. But I need to make sure the senators and the troops and President Trump and everybody else knows when you call me 24/7, you're getting fully dialed in, Pete, just like you always did in Iraq and Afghanistan. So this is the biggest deployment of my life, and there won't be a drop of alcohol on my lips while I'm doing it.
Okay, let's talk about the financial allegations, because this is potentially problematic for some of these senators. You ran 2 different vets organizations, Veterans for Freedom and Concerned Vets for America. And the first one, anonymous reporting in the New Yorker. Forgive me for asking you about these anonymous reports.
You
right?
have to, though. That's why we're here. The reason this has been allowed to percolate is because they were so ridiculous and they were all anonymous that we didn't want to give them oxygen.
Yeah, I get it.
But now, because of where we are, we're answering questions.
Okay, so the anonymous reporting by the New Yorker says that organization wound up in enormous debt, that they couldn't pay its creditors. They said without more donations, they were going to be facing bankruptcy. This is under your leadership. CBS News reporting that in 2008, at that organization, you guys raised $8.7 million, but spent $9 million, suggesting financial mismanagement. Is that true?
It's not true. Let me tell you why. I'm really proud of the work we did at Vets for Freedom. I didn't start the organization, but I came in shortly after it was started and built upon the success of the group. And we fought for the warfighters in the surge in Iraq and Afghanistan. Our job was to bring the message of what we believe to be a successful strategy in the surge and what General Petraeus was doing in Iraq and advocate for that in the American people. And that made its way up to 2008. Well, what was happening in 2008? Barack Obama was running against John McCain. John McCain had been a big advocate of the surge and winning the war in Iraq. We had worked a lot with him on Capitol Hill. I actually know a lot of the senators on Capitol Hill from my work at Vets for Freedom and Concerned Vets for America. A good chunk of the offices I'm walking into are senators who I've met with time and time again because of my work on military and veterans advocacy. That started with Vets for Freedom. We traveled the country rallying the public. We went on Capitol Hill. We wrote op-eds. I went on TV. That might have been the first time I was on TV with you.
It was right around there.
You probably gave me my first shot, not just the contributorship. We're making the case for the war. And a big part of that was raising money so that we could run ads that would promote veterans candidates, or we're a 501c4, so you can't get too political. You're a nonprofit, but you can advocate. You can say, hey, John McCain is for winning the war, and Barack Obama is going to end it in disgrace, or however you want to say that. And so we ran a lot of ads and raised a lot of money. We were very successful and proud of it. Ultimately, we were political novices. I guess I studied politics at Princeton. That's what I did, but I didn't have any political experience. I'd been in the military. We had some advice on the outside, some of which in very slimy ways are now turning on us, but that's to be expected. And ultimately, at the very end, I'll never forget, we were about 2 weeks out from the election, and the Politico types were saying, we're looking at the polling, and McCain's going to lose, and it's time to turn off the spigot, because he's going to lose. And you tell that to a guy who's back from war, believes in the war, has a candidate who's fighting for that war, and that lieutenant, which I was at the time, is going to say, go fuck yourself. I'm fighting for this war. I'm going to raise the money to do even more. I'm doubling down when you say the fight is lost, because it matters to me and it matters to the war fighters. And that's what we did. So we spent a little bit more than we had at the end, cognizant of it. We knew it. We said, hey, we're going to pour a few more ads in at a few key places for a few races because we want to double down on trying to win this thing. We're not going to abandon this guy when he's been there for us. But we knew we were over our skis. And when the election was over and McCain had lost, there was not much appetite for funding a veterans organization that was in debt because of that. And so I spent the next, it was a very humbling experience. I spent the next year and a half fundraising from donors to pay off debt and working with different vendors to try to negotiate down contracts and prices. But I spent a year and a half working every day, and you know what we did? We paid it all off, and we squared it away. And ultimately, we did merge with another organization, a friendly organization, consolidated and moved on, and I moved on. But in doing so, I felt a personal responsibility to make sure we were even when it was done. But there was zero impropriety. There wasn't a dollar spent that we weren't proud of spending on behalf of a cause we believed in. We were just amateurs at that moment in time.
For the record, David Belavia, co-founder of the organization, brought you in. He's a Medal of Honor recipient, and said not one irresponsible fiscal decision was made by this group. Pete is a leader to his core. Backing you, Sergeant Sean Bryan, retired U.S. Marine Corps, total professionalism at Veterans for Freedom with Pete Hegseth, and it went on. Okay, Concerned Veterans for America. That was a different group, and this is the one. There are a lot of allegations swirling around this that appear to have been initiated by mostly, we now believe, Jessie Jane Duff, who is also a Fox News contributor. She was
never a Fox News contributor, but she was on a lot.
Okay, she was on a lot. Thank you. So the reason we think it was her is because there's been reporting that she was the one who was behind this so-called whistleblower report at Concerned Vets about you, that it was a 7-page report. It's now wound up at The New Yorker, and it's what Jane Mayer of The New Yorker, who smeared Kavanaugh, is basing a lot of her reporting on. This is some of what's in there, The New Yorker report, in large part based on this report. January 2016, you resigned from that organization under pressure. 3 sources said you were forced out due to mismanagement and an alcohol problem. The whistleblower letter, it's making these accusations, including that there was public drunkenness, there was inappropriate behavior, there was allegedly an attempted sexual assault at that strip club in Louisiana.
That was not me.
No, but that you didn't do anything about is the allegation.
Yep.
And that there's a second anonymous mail. And forgive me, Jessie Jane Duff, because she hasn't actually gone on the record with any of this. But there's a second anonymous mail cited in this report who says he went to a bar in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio with you on May 29th, 2015, and saw you and another guy standing on the bar screaming in some, quote, violent way, "Kill all Muslims." And when asked about this by The New Yorker, this person said to Jane Mayer, "I will deny that. I will deny that if you print that." And she says, "Well, I've got you on email." And he said, "Well, I'm going to deny that it happened." So in any event, that's what we have about your time at Concerned Vets. Would you like to address those allegations?
Have any more delightful things to say? First of all, I will only say that I'm incredibly proud of what we accomplished at Concerned Veterans for America. I actually would argue that there's not a single vets group in the country that accomplished more in a smaller amount of time than we did. If you look at the reforms at the VA, we talked about this a lot on your show, the Veterans Accountability Act and the Choice Act for vets. We were the intellectual harbinger. We started that movement, built a whole report on it, drove it up on Capitol Hill, and ultimately led to its passing by working with Democrats and Republicans. And then Donald Trump took it and ran with it. Do you know how hard it is to get reforms passed in this town? It's really, really hard, especially the ability to fire employees, cut through the SES system, and the ability to take on the VA bureaucracy and let people choose their health care. Like what we did, a couple of vets and military family members with generous donors, organizing and building is truly remarkable. Again, the amount of people that are willing to go on the record that were in all of these places with their name, with their credibility tied to it is staggering. They're in the media and they're talking. Jane Mayer and others who are reporting this refuse to talk to those people. All they've done is talk to disgruntled former employees. By the way, I'm at the point where I don't even know if they're talking to real employees. I really mean that. I mean, this stuff is so bogus.
How can you know?
What does it take to add a 3rd or 4th or 5th anonymous source to a story? There's no accountability for them on that. So I don't believe any of it at this point. But ultimately, all of those allegations, again, anonymously given, totally unsourced, fly in the face of the overarching trajectory of that organization. I want to get to the end of that as well. I was not fired. I was not pushed out. There were no allegations of impropriety. There were no allegations of excessive drinking. I knew all the people above us in the hierarchy of that. Ultimately, I think it was actually on your show, and I mean that, where I was talking about defeating ISIS. There was a foreign policy discussion going on. It was the end of 2015, early 2016, how we need to crush ISIS. Very hawkish about that. And I'll never forget, I got off the air with you, and I got a phone call from some of the folks tied to the organization saying, this has exacerbated the perceived differences in policy we have about foreign policy, and we need to start a discussion about whether this is going to work. They had just had a very different view of foreign policy than I did, and they didn't want the organization to move into foreign policy. They wanted it to stay focused on veterans and sort of economic issues. And I'm saying, we got the black flag of ISIS flying over the place where I fought.
Right.
You want me to be silent on this?
I remember that.
You remember that? I mean, we had some, and so ultimately, after a couple of weeks, it was agreed upon, let's just part ways. And that's the other letter I have in here, is the letter from the trustee of Concerned Veterans for America.
I have some of this. So there's Randy Lair.
Yep, that's
trustee. In 2016, before any of this broke, before any of this smear campaign, he went on the record in a letter saying Pete was a strong leader at Concerned Veterans for America and was not fired because this whistleblower thing had raised its ugly head at that time. Did you know that American homeowners nationwide have over $32 trillion in equity? And cyber criminals are targeting it with a growing scam the FBI calls house stealing. House alarms, doorbell cameras, and deadbolts will not work against these thieves because they're not after your stuff, they're after your equity. If your title is not being monitored, scammers can transfer it into their name and then take out loans against it or even sell it behind your back. The best way to protect your equity is with triple lock protection from Home Title Lock. Triple lock protection is 24/7 monitoring, and God forbid, if the worst happens, restoration services at no out-of-pocket cost to you. When was the last time you checked on your home title? Likely never. And that's exactly what these scammers are counting on. Make sure you're not already a victim. You can get a free title history report and a 30-day free trial of triple lock protection today by going to HometitleLock.com and using promo code Megyn, or click on the link in the description. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code MEGYN, HometitleLock.com. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.